Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome everyone to the second day of Analytics Week. This is Don Rodriguez, Director of Analytics at NetElixir. We appreciate you attending. And our agenda today, and then we will get to our guest speaker. For those of you who weren't with us yesterday, NetElixir is a full-service search marketing agency founded back in 2005 to help digital marketers succeed online. We have offices, our headquarters here in Princeton. We have an office in London, and we have our operations team in Hyderabad, India. We are a team of 85 fanatically analytical search marketers. Altogether, we have over 5.5 million hours of hands-on search marketing experience. We are a full-service agency. Our core areas of services are managing paid search campaigns, doing search engine optimization, and then we have done some social media optimization as well. One thing that makes us a little bit unique is that we have an in-house technology team, and we have an in-house technology platform, LXR. We have our LXR Retail, which is the multi-channel platform that we use to manage digital marketing campaigns for our clients. We have the LXR Marketplace, which you can find at lxrmarketplace.com, which is a source for free tools for search marketing and apps aimed at small businesses. We currently have over 60,000 users in 170 countries using those tools. And finally, we have LXR SEO, which is our SEO toolkit and task manager for small businesses, which you can try for free at lxrseo.com. We also do consulting work. This week's topic is analytics, and we have done some interesting consulting work in analytics for some name brand clients like Toys R Us and Brady Corporation. We also have done work with digital marketing strategy and the development of executive dashboards and reporting. Since today's topics, this week's topic is analytics, we wanted to just introduce you to some of the standard analytics packages that we offer. The packages that I'm highlighting today are aimed at your experience level with Google Analytics. So, for example, we have what we call our rookie packages, which are aimed at people who are new, and these are one-time services aimed to make sure you get off the right foot with your Google Analytics. If you were with us yesterday, I spoke a lot about the need to be very detailed oriented in the way that you track your traffic, for example. And that's one of the aims of these services here. For those of you who have been using Google Analytics for a little while, we have our insight packages, which are delivered on a monthly or a weekly basis, your choice. These are subscription packages, and they're really aimed at people who are comfortable with Google Analytics, understand how Google Analytics collects data, but really don't have the time or resources to dive into it as frequently as they want. And so the intention of these is to give you, increased visibility to some of your key performance indicators or KPIs that help manage your online business. And finally, for the data junkies, for all of those who were with us yesterday who said they've been using Google Analytics for more than 5 years, these are 3 offerings that we have that are aimed at generating ideas for new revenue opportunities for your company. We have a keyword profitability analysis, which identifies your most profitable keywords. We have a market expansion analysis, which uses your site search data. And then we have an analysis that helps identify the key drivers, digital marketing drivers for your top products. We also do consulting work, as I mentioned before, so we'd be happy to talk to any one of you about any analytics challenges that you have are currently facing. Here's a brief look at our clients, some of our clients. NetElixir's sweet spot has always been online retail, and we've recently expanded into the travel space with hostels.com and hostelworld.com. And although the sweet spot has been retail, we do recognize that every retail business is different and unique, and our approach is comparable, right? We take a different approach with each one of our clients. Now, I'd just like to introduce NetElixir University to you. NetElixir University was launched several years ago with our founder's vision of democratizing the digital marketing industry through exceptional knowledge and expertise sharing. Knowledge sharing is a big part of the culture here at NetElixir. And back then, we set a pretty ambitious goal of training 10,000 businesses worldwide by the end of this year. I'm happy to say, and some of you heard Kelly say this yesterday, we've trained over 8,000 businesses so far, and by the end of this week, hope to have that number up closer to 9,000. We invite you to join our NetElixir University LinkedIn group at the link that you see on the screen. And that's also where you will find today's thought experiment, which you'll see later in our presentation. This is our agenda for Analytics Weeks, for those of you who were not with us yesterday. But before I review the agenda, I'd just like to say why we're doing this Analytics Week concept. Yes, it is dovetailing off of a successful effort with SEO Week that we did in March when we celebrated Einstein's birthday. But more importantly, in the collective experience of NetElixir's employees over the last 10 years working with several hundred online retailers, then and now we find that retailers are still not doing analytics right? And so our hope is to help educate and share knowledge that will help you do it right. And what we've learned is, first, you need to know what the right questions are. You then need to know how to measure your data to answer those questions. You need to know where to look for those answers, and then you need to know how to turn those answers into actual insights for your business. And that's sort of the hope for the agenda for this week. Yesterday we talked about some web analytics basics. Today we're going to have a guest speaker from Google talking about the key benefits of Google's Universal Analytics, which is the latest version of the platform. Tomorrow you'll hear from a couple of our clients, Melissa Anderson and Jordan Levy, about some of their favorite retail analytics hacks. And then Friday you get to listen to me again talking about mastering digital marketing attribution, which will be presenting the results of a study that we just completed. A study which I think you'll find some of the findings very surprising and provocative. I know that we did here. So if you haven't considered joining, please consider registering for those other sessions. Quick housekeeping. Please ask questions. The only way to learn is to ask questions. As Kelly mentioned yesterday, there are no stupid questions when it comes to analytics. I learn something every day about analytics, and I've been using Google Analytics since 2008. We will submit the questions and all answers on our blog, including any that we didn't get a chance to discuss during the Q&A session. I encourage you to take screenshots. We're still waiting to hear from our friends at Google's legal team as to whether or not we'll be able to share the information you're going to see today. We also encourage you, please share this knowledge with your followers. Tweet what you're seeing. Please use the hashtag AnalyticsWeek. And then again, please, if you haven't registered for tomorrow or Thursday, consider doing so. And then finally, obviously welcome your thoughts and feedback. If you could just send them to university@netelixir.com, that would be tremendous. For those of you not here yesterday, please use the questions tool for submitting your questions. We are setting aside about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. And I just wanted to remind those of you who were here yesterday and inform those of you who are new to the audience today, as part of our Analytics Week celebration here, we are offering some free mid-year health checks. It's a good time to just do a little health check of either your Google Analytics, your paid search, or your SEO efforts in time for your holiday planning. If you're interested, just please send us an email at university@netelixir.com, and if you would be kind enough to include the subject line of GA, PPC, or SEO. And obviously, please include your name and number in case we have a challenge getting hold of you via email. So today's topic is the key benefits of Universal Analytics. So you're going to hear a little bit about what Universal Analytics is. Marlene is going to take you through a couple of the steps for upgrading your classic version of GA to the new version. And then she's going to do a deep dive into two super powerful features of Universal Analytics. Enhanced e-commerce is something that you can add in and is enabled by Universal Analytics. And then the unique user ID feature is new, in Universal Analytics, and that allows you to do cross-device tracking, which is sort of the holy grail of attribution these days. So I think you'll find that topic very interesting. And before I pass it over to Marlena, I just wanted to post up today's poll. Okay. I'm going to leave that open for a few seconds. Okay. About 2/3 of you have answered so far. Very interesting. Almost 50-50. All right, I'm going to give you another 10 seconds or so. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Closing it now. All right, and you can see fairly even, 57% or not, 43% saying yes. I'd have to say that's consistent with what I've seen in our client base. I think the minority of our clients have upgraded. So today's topic will be very relevant to you. So now I'm going to hide that. Let me just introduce our guest speaker before I pass the baton to her. Marlena Laskowska is the measurement and attribution lead for North America for Google. She's been a Googler since 2008 and started out her career in Google in the sales organization, and currently is focused on commercializing their products, working with their alpha and beta program, doing training and resource, which is one reason why she's helping us today, as well as doing some strategy consulting across, the multiple Google platforms that includes Google Analytics and AdWords. She's a Harvard alum and studied Polish as an undergrad, which is interesting. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the control over to her. And great. All right, take it away, Marlena.
Great, thanks, Don. And can you hear me all right? I'm gonna assume yes, unless I hear otherwise.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
I'm getting thumbs up.
Awesome. So hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. As Don mentioned, my name is Marlena Laskowska, and I'm a product specialist here at Google, specifically focusing on measurement and attribution. And so what I'm going to talk about is Universal Analytics. And Universal Analytics is something many of you, well, at least 47% of you are probably very familiar with, but there might still be some confusion out there as to what exactly is Universal Analytics, what does this mean, and what are some of the key benefits for you and your business. So at its core, Universal Analytics is really the reimagining of Google Analytics for today's consumer landscape. We know that with device proliferation, digital behavior has changed quite a bit, and the way our consumers interact with our brands has changed significantly over the last few years, and so our measurement capabilities have also have to change in order to catch up to that changing consumer landscape. And that's exactly what Universal Analytics allows us to do. It allows us to catch up to the evolving digital landscape so that we can start measuring all of these touch points. At its core, the reason that Universal Analytics is so powerful is that we've upgraded how we're able to collect and ingest data about your customers. So I'm going to touch on three kind of key areas that make Universal Analytics really different. The first of these is the measurement protocol. So what the measurement protocol allows us to do is make an HTTP request to essentially any environment so that we can start collecting data about our customers beyond just the cookies. So we're no longer limited to web cookie-based measurement. We can start bringing in offline conversions like calls. We can even measure things that occur on a game console, which in the cookie-only world was previously not an option. The second key feature, which we're going to go into much greater depth later in the presentation, is this idea of the user ID. And what the user ID allows us to really do is start moving towards a user view of our customers. So we can start linking all their transactions not only across different channels, but also cross device. And then finally, kind of the key feature difference I want to highlight is custom data import. So what this allows us to do is to take different data sources, including offline sources like your ERM system, and bring them into Web Analytics and join them with your Google Analytics data, so you're seeing a much fuller picture of your customer, and then you can use this information for your digital strategy, including remarketing campaigns. And I think the best thing about this, it can be as simple as uploading a spreadsheet to GA, so it really doesn't have to be overly complicated, and it lets you join many different data sets that previously we couldn't see within a single view. So then, what is the same about Google Analytics and Universal Analytics? Pretty much everything else. I don't want to overstate this, because obviously the way we collect data is a huge change and a huge upgrade, and I'm going to go into some of those key features. But what I want to highlight here is that you're still using the same interface and there's full feature parity. So upgrading to Universal Analytics doesn't mean that you lose any of the great stuff that you have in Google Analytics today. It simply means that you get access to a whole slew of new features and functionalities. So I think this might have been a bit of a misconception, or maybe a point of confusion when we initially launched Universal Analytics, that it was a completely different product. But there's still all the great things that we see within Google Analytics that will continue to be available. The upgrade process is really two-step. So the first step is upgrading your property directly within the interface. So if you go into your admin settings, if you haven't yet upgraded, you'll see the option to transfer to Universal Analytics, and this must be done as the first step. Something to keep in mind here is that it may take 24 to 48 hours to process, so make sure that you do give some time for this first step before you move to step 2. Step 2 is actually updating the Google Analytics tags on the website. So upgrading to Universal Analytics does require a code change. So if you're using the ga.js or the dc.js code, we're going to ask you to upgrade to analytics.js for web tracking, or the newer versions of the SDK for app tracking. Something that I want to highlight and go into with a little bit more detail is that using Google Tag Manager can make this process very, very easy, and can make future upgrades to your code very easy as well. Some of you might be familiar with Google Tag Manager. This is our tag management system, and what it allows you to do is to place a single snippet of code on every page of your site, and then use this as the container tag. So then when you are making tag upgrades or adding tags, you never have to actually touch the website source code again. It'll all be housed within this container tag, and you'll be able to modify everything within Google Tag Manager. There are many benefits that come with this. One of the key benefits is faster load times, because tags will load more efficiently. We have a great case study with Rail Europe, where they were able to reduce page load time by 20%. Simply by moving to Tag Manager, or by using Google Tag Manager. And I included the link there. If you go to google.com/tagmanager/success-stories, there's a whole bunch of case studies, including this Rail Europe one, that you can read more about customers that found greater efficiency with GTM. The second thing that I want to highlight is easier testing. When you want to test new versions of the code or new customizations, we have a great debugging console available within the product, and also a preview mode, so that you're able to test more quickly and more safely. And along those lines, there's also a great version history option, which lets you revert to an older version of your tracking setup in the event that something isn't set up properly and you need to go back to the way things were formally set up. So it's very easy to revert back when you make changes. And then lastly, GTM gives you great control over users that are able to access and make changes. So there's a lot of flexibility while maintaining that control over what goes on your site and what features are added and what tags are updated. I wanted to highlight one more case study, which is also available on that site that I had mentioned on google.com/tag manager. Jobs to Careers also upgraded to Google Tag Manager, and they were actually able to double their conversions because they were able to test more efficiently. So when they were executing A/B tests, the setup was much quicker and in a much safer environment, and this actually allowed them to grow their business base, which I think is pretty powerful and really speaks to the great benefits of Google Tag Manager. So you might be thinking, I get how to upgrade, and I sort of get what Universal Analytics is, but maybe you're still not completely sold on why you really should upgrade and you should start taking this step now. And I think the thing to really focus on here is that this is truly the first step towards more user-centric analysis. Universal Analytics allows us to move away from measuring campaigns and from measuring individual line items to now looking at our customer and understanding their behavior from start to finish, moving from how they arrive to our site to how they interact with the site to ultimately how they convert, and then moving down the road to what is the lifetime value of those individual customers. So this is really the place that we want to get to, is this full user-centric view. Universal Analytics has a ton of great benefits. As Don mentioned, there's two key features that we're going to focus on today that are hopefully very relevant to many of you in the audience. And those two features are enhanced e-commerce and cross-device with the user ID feature. So this feature that I had mentioned a little bit earlier in the beginning that allows us to start tracking our users across their different touch points. Looking at enhanced e-commerce, many of you are probably familiar with the standard reporting that we offer today. And e-commerce does allow us to capture a lot of really terrific and powerful metrics, right? We can tie not only our conversions and transactions, but revenue back to the originating source and start understanding what drove where our profitable customers are coming from. But that's not really the entire story, right? Studies have shown that the average conversion rate is about 2.7%. That means that 97% of sessions on your site do not end in a conversion. And by only looking at that 3% of conversions, are we really understanding how to grow that customer base? We need to start looking at it from the perspective of how our customers are moving through the site. So they're arriving on the site, they're maybe browsing different product detail pages, they're adding items to cart, starting the checkout process, and then finally deciding to purchase. So there's all of these steps that when we're just looking at transactions, we're ignoring because we're only looking at that ultimate purchase. And all of those different steps can really help us more fully understand the customer and also actually drive increased purchases. And that's where enhanced e-commerce comes in. Enhanced e-commerce really lets us slice and dice using these kind of full view of the customer journey. So first, helps us understand what customers are really doing from the minute they arrive on the site to the minute that they convert or decide not to convert. And it helps us better understand at what point in this process did they decide not to convert. Second, it helps us help our customers find the products that they want. We have more granular and customizable reporting by category, by brand, so that you can start grouping your most high-value products and adjusting strategy based on that. And then lastly, it makes it easier to optimize by allowing you to create remarketing lists around these different segments, which I'll get into in a little bit more detail. So starting with understand what customers are really doing. So going back to this view that I touched on a second ago, we know that there's several steps before we get to that ultimate transaction. And now with the new shopping behavior analysis reporting within enhanced e-commerce, we can see each of those steps and see where our customers are falling off so that we can start optimizing around those steps. And what do I mean by optimizing? I mean creating customer segments and using GA's incredibly powerful segmentation abilities to start layering this on top of any other information that we're collecting about the customers. So if there's no shopping activity for a portion of your sessions, start remarketing to these undecided customers, and your message will likely be different than for customers that are a little bit further down the path. If they don't add anything to cart, review the product details pages. Can we make improvements there? For cart abandonment, think about how customers are using the add to cart function. Is it being used as a wish list? Are they adding a product on one device and then maybe converting much later down the road on a different device? And if so, how can we keep them engaged and how can we make sure that that conversion happens ultimately? For checkout abandonment, if they're so close to purchasing and then eventually leave, can we re-engage these users with promotions so that we're driving and getting back some of this lost revenue? And then finally, for those that do ultimately end up purchasing, we're going to want to continue to re-engage them and build that lifetime value. But again, this messaging and the way that we speak to these customers should be different than how we speak to the other, let's say, 97% of customers in the path prior. So I mentioned remarketing a lot, and I think that's because it's just one of the most incredible features where we can join GA data with your digital strategy. And currently, as it exists today, so outside of e-commerce, we already have over 200 different signals that you can start to remarket off of. And with this new reporting and this more granular reporting, we can layer on this behavioral information on top of all these other signals like demographics to create really powerful segments and speak to our customers based on the message that will move them, that will drive that particular segment. So looking at a couple of the reports, what are some use cases for how we can better understand what our customers are doing? So one of the cuts that we can look at is by device, and I think this is a really hot button topic, especially as mobile sort of is the primary driver within digital media viewing. So we want to make sure that we're approaching this carefully and correctly. So one way to look at this is, are customers completing more purchases on one particular device? Is one particular device more profitable? And if so, can we start optimizing around that by remarketing to customers on that device? On the flip side, if a particular device is highly likely to result in a lot of abandonment, can we optimize the user experience to try to maintain those customers and to prevent them from jumping off during the process? So for example, on mobile, can we add steps to pre-populate payment information? Can you use something like Google Plus or Facebook Connect to make that even easier if that seems to be a driving force for lost purchases? And then the third use case, which I've mentioned a couple of times, is really leveraging the incredibly powerful customer segmentation available in GA to layer on top of this user behavior that we now get insight into. And then importing those segments to create remarketing lists and to optimize not only the users that you're reaching, but also the message that you're sharing with them. So then going into a little bit about understanding the products that your customers want. We can start to look at the full life cycle of product purchases. So what are your most popular products? What are customers viewing most often? Which customers or which products rather are most frequently abandoned in cart? Is there a reason? Are customers using that cart as a wish list and then finding the product at a lower price somewhere else and then abandoning? Or is it simply the experience around that particular product page? And then which products are converting the best and most efficiently? So we can really get view into all of these different segments and start to understand which products fit in where. What's new and I think really great about some of this enhanced e-commerce reporting is the ability to create product categories. So these are things that you can customize within implementation, and if you're using GTM, you can do directly within Google Tag Manager and create customer or product categories, so you can view different product sets and how those different product sets perform together within these different buckets. And so what these types of reports help you to do is understand what products are complementary, which products sell well together, which products should we be pairing for email and remarketing campaigns, but also within the site when customers are viewing the products. How can we better optimize what they see to increase the revenue that's being transacted at any one particular time? And then the third is how do we make it even easier, right? To make sure that we're giving our customers the experience they want. So going back to this customer behavior or shopping behavior report that I talked a little bit about earlier, I want to emphasize how much granularity we can see over here. So when you select which dimension you want to look at, we can slice that by the source and the medium. We can go down to the keyword level and start understanding which campaigns drive the most purchases, but also which campaigns might drive the most cart abandonment or checkout abandonment, so that this gives us more insight into the specific users coming from those different strategies. We can also use product lists to optimize on-site behavior, so kind of to optimize your digital shelf. This is the part of the structure that I mentioned earlier with the product categories. We can create customized lists and then see how different products perform together in these bundles, so we can understand how to optimize what our customers are seeing and how they're moving throughout the site. And then just a quick note on some of the text that's down there on the site. Product attribution also, understanding how customers are moving from add to cart to checkout to purchase. We can customize that checkout experience, or you can customize that within your reporting, so that we're reviewing the steps that matter most to you and to your business. So those are just a few kind of the key highlights on the reporting that's available, but there's really so much more that we wouldn't have the time to discuss it all. For example, I want to highlight a couple of features. So in-app e-commerce, again, getting really granular as to how customers are moving through your app to ultimately purchase. Where are they dropping off within the app? I mentioned this a couple of times, but Google Tag Manager support. Once Google Tag Manager is set up on your site, it becomes much easier and much faster to implement some of this customization, to create your product categories, to create your product lists, so that we can see that those different slices of the reporting. Internal promotions and coupons. If you have a specific coupon code associated with the campaign, we can now see how the specific coupon code performs across all of these touch points. The same goes with affiliates. If you have an affiliate code working with an affiliate network, you can go to the affiliates code report and see how each affiliate is performing. Refunds, another great feature, which this ties back to the data import I mentioned in the beginning. With something as simple as a spreadsheet upload, we can now look at refunds that maybe weren't reflected before. So we know what customers purchased and we know the upfront revenue, and now we can see down the funnel view to what was refunded, closing that loop. And then checkout, which I mentioned again, is customizable how we're viewing this, and then the hierarchy of the product categories. So we can go down 5 layers within those customized lists. So you can start with a much higher overview and then cut into very specific buckets. There's a ton of great information we have available on Enhanced E-commerce. 2 of the resources I want to highlight. I feel like I always love to highlight the Google Analytics Help Center because I think it's just an incredible source of information. So there is a ton of reporting or information within there. Also, our Analytics Academy. This is run by our Google Analytics education team, which is led by our Google Analytics evangelist, Justin Catroni. And there's a session within Analytics Academy on e-commerce specifically that really deep dives into how to use these reports and how to get the most out of them for your business. So I highly recommend, if you're interested in learning more, and checking those resources out. So then going into this second feature of user ID. Before we dig into how this works with user ID, I think it's worth doing a little refresher on how measurement of the past, or the classic cookie measurement, works. If I'm a customer and I visit your website on mobile, tablet, and desktop, I'm actually reported as 3 separate cookies and therefore 3 separate users. So what Google Analytics is reporting is 3 different sessions for me. With user ID override, we can now tie this back together so that we're no longer reporting 3 different sessions, but we're able to report, or 3 different users, but we're able to report 3 different sessions for a single user. And the way that this works is it allows you to, as the name suggests, override the standard Google Analytics ID that's being issued each time I click on the website with a single ID, so that you can push the same ID to me whether I'm visiting you on a mobile site or whether I'm visiting you on a desktop site, and then all of these sessions can be stitched together within the GA reporting view. Some things to note about what this means exactly. User ID override does depend on a user taking some sort of action on the site to identify him or herself. So the most common way that this is done is through logging in. So you have a login option. This is a great way to be able to generate the user ID, but this isn't the only way. Click on an email campaign could be used, newsletter sign up, basically any sort of authenticating action on the site can be used to tie this information together. Just keep in mind that the user ID should be unique and persistent, and most importantly that it cannot contain any personally identifiable information. So you can't actually push email addresses or names back into GA. The user ID that's used to stitch the sessions within GA has to be a random number. But once we're able to get that information and collect it using the user ID, we get access to some really, really great reporting, particularly on the cross-device front. And so this is information about how our users are moving across devices that isn't readily available anywhere else. We fully acknowledge that you won't have 100% of logged in users. So with the very first report that you'll want to look at is what percent of your users are signed in. So what percent of your users are going to be reflected within these user ID reports. And this can help you get a sense of, is that segment representative of your customer base, and can it be used to make to generate insights about the broader customers. And oftentimes what we found, especially with retailers, is that you're actually able to generate quite a significant portion of signed in users. Then what we get access to is, like I mentioned, reports that are based on cross-device movement. So the first report that we're looking at here is the device overlap. So 4 key metrics, like the one highlighted here, unique visitors and revenue, how many users are coming from a single device versus maybe 2 devices like tablet and desktop versus all 3. We can take these reports one step further and use GA's powerful segmentation to create segments around them. So how does this device overlap differ when it's direct traffic versus when it's search traffic? One of the, I think, most powerful, most interesting reports is our device path report. So this shows us exactly how customers are moving between devices. Where do they start? Where do they finish? And what are the key metrics associated with that group of users? Obviously, one of the ones we'll want to highlight is e-commerce and revenue. What is the average revenue when a consumer only interacts with desktop versus when they're a multi-device user, and maybe when they start with mobile versus start with desktop? And this allows us to actually get insight into those specific segments. And then kind of along those lines too, the acquisition device report. So within each device, how much revenue is originating on that device? And that means how often is this device playing the role to introduce a customer to your brand? I thought the best way to kind of end this section is to talk about a case study that we have published. Galeries Lafayette is a French retailer, and they've implemented user ID and have done some really, really terrific stuff to better understand their customers and get the most value out of their reporting. So first, they're able to analyze what role each device played within the purchase journey. I think from a mobile perspective particularly, this is critical because it turns out that 50% of their mobile users are also cross-device users. This means if they're only measuring and only optimizing on mobile from a last click perspective, they're actually missing 50% of the revenue that mobile influenced, and so it's really not reflective of true performance. When looking at revenue across multi-device users, they found that multi-device users are their most profitable, and it's 300% more profitable than the average customer. So this really was a customer segment that they needed to focus on and that they couldn't ignore. And previously, before they were able to tie these touch points together, it's not a view that they were able to see. And then, as I mentioned, they were able to map out by looking at what customers were doing within each device and what when each device was most prominent within that device path. They were able to map out exactly the role that that device played and then optimize to the specific context. So not only optimize their marketing campaigns, but also optimize how the customers interact with their site design within each of those specific instances. Mobile happens to be an entry point, so we should make product viewing as easy as possible on mobile device. But mobile also plays a loyalty role. That's where customers come to check on the status of their product. That's where they'll likely come back when they're initiating the next interaction. Although initially this, I mentioned this was cross-device specific, I thought it would be worth mentioning some other insights that Galleries Lafayette found using the user ID insight. So in addition to the great cross-device reporting, they were also able to tie in offline revenue. So they are a retailer that has a pretty strong offline presence, and when they were able to tie their offline revenue with their Google Analytics or Universal Analytics reporting, they were able to find that AdWords revenue, or AdWords ROAS, was actually 2.4 times higher than when they weren't taking this into account. And the way that they did this is, again, by using this user ID feature to tie customer touch points together. So they started, same as with the cross-device, by having some sort of authenticating behavior on site, so tracking their logins, tracking newsletter signups. They then tracked offline purchases through their loyalty program, and then they used the measurement protocol to tie all these data touch points together so that we were looking really start to finish full circle from the initial digital interaction to the ultimate in-store purchase. And this allowed them to get some pretty granular insights about which channels drive the most in-store activity. So they found for every 100 interactions that SEM drives on the website, it actually influences 51 transactions in-store as well. This number is even higher for retargeting, which makes sense. These are likely a lot of their more loyal customers, and even higher for their display campaigns. So they were able to generate not only this great cross-device view, but then close the loop and understand how this then also generated all this additional purchase activity directly in store. So to kind of finish up and summarize some of the key points highlighted here, Universal Analytics really is, like I mentioned, a user-centric analysis venue. It allows you to track the full customer journey, this means the full customer journey not only in terms of how they get to your website, but then how they interact with your website and then how they interact on their path to purchase, as we saw with the enhanced e-commerce reporting. This also allows you to understand how customers are moving across devices, which is pivotal when mobile accounts for 90% of initiating or originating interactions on average. And then by upgrading to Universal Analytics, you can stay up to date with new features and implement new features with even greater ease, excuse me, when using Google Tag Manager. And so I think the one additional note I'd like to make on that is that Universal Analytics is the platform we're going to be using moving forward. So all new features will only be rolled out on Universal Analytics. So if you want to take advantage of these new features, you will have to upgrade. And that's all I have for prepared content. So if we want to maybe move to questions.
Yeah, thanks, Marlena. That was terrific. Why don't you pass it back to me, and we'll go into our Q&A.
Perfect.
Okay, just want to remind you about our offer with the mid-year health checks. So if you're interested, send us a note, and we'll start our Q&A. And we've got about 10 minutes. Okay. But before we start our Q&A, I always like to, if you were here yesterday, you saw that we had we're having a thought experiment every day. So here's today's thought experiment. They get harder every day for those of you who answered yesterday. Yesterday's response was awesome. Over 80% of the submitted answers were correct. But I challenge you because today's is a little tougher. So you can view these thought experiments on our Analytics University page on LinkedIn. And without further ado, let's start Q&A. I'll tell you, we got one good question that, given the poll results, I want to do something a little different here, which is I also want to address this question to those members of the audience that are using Universal Analytics. And if you could just submit your comments via the question tool, that would be terrific, and we'll include your comments in the blog entry when we post that. The question was, we've looked at upgrading to Universal Analytics and have been told that we should consider using excuse me, wrong question. I'll come back to that one. If I was going to show my company's CEO one feature of Universal Analytics in order to get the budget I need to do the upgrade, which feature should I show him? So for those of you who are using Universal Analytics, if you have a thought on that, if you could just type it into the question box. And Marlena, I'll throw that over to you. I know what I would answer, but I don't want to skew your thoughts.
Yeah, so I mean, this might sound like the obvious answer given the presentation I just gave, but it would really be, it would have to be enhanced e-commerce and user ID, and particularly user ID, because I think this is such a powerful feature to close the loop completely on all your campaigns and all your reporting, and then leverage that for marketing strategy. So I think that would be my top one.
Okay, very good. And let's see, I'm just seeing if I got some responses. Okay. There was a question on cost, which I can answer. There is no cost from a Google standpoint for you to use Universal Analytics. The only cost that you'll incur would be any cost that it takes you to upgrade, the tags on your site for Universal Analytics. And as Marlena mentioned, using Google Tag Manager is a great way to go to do that. We had a couple questions related to migrating and upgrading their accounts, so I'll try and combine them. The first was, how do you recommend an account migrate from the old version to the new version so they keep their historical data and minimize any interruption in their data collection? And dovetailing into that one, the second part of that was we've looked at upgrading the Universal Analytics. We've been told that we should consider using Google Tag Manager as well, which Marlena had mentioned earlier. The question there is, should we install one before the other, pursue the implementation simultaneously? What do you recommend? So there you have it.
Yeah, so I think if you're looking to upgrade to Universal Analytics and aren't using Google Tag Manager, that is the perfect opportunity to upgrade. So I would start with that, and you can do the upgrade simultaneously. Although, you might want to make sure to get the Google Tag Manager implementation done first. In terms of losing data, the upgrade really should be seamless. We now have full feature parity between Google Analytics and Universal Analytics, so there should be no loss of data. Just make sure that we get the property upgraded on the front end using those admin settings, and then upgrade the code. I would say if you have a lot of very, very nuanced customizations, you may consider creating a new property and using Google Tag Manager just to test out the implementation and making sure everything is in place before you make the switch. But otherwise, it should really be clean. There should be no loss of historical data at all once the codes are upgraded.
Okay. Next question is one that I get asked a lot when I talk about Universal Analytics with our clients. When will Google be dropping support for the old version?
Yeah, so you may have seen on the Upgrade Center in the Developer's Guide that we mentioned 2 years. The code will be maintained for at least 2 years. That being said, we don't really share an exact date when it'll be deprecated. Some of you may know that the old Urchin code technically still collects data, so it isn't completely deprecated. But as I mentioned, no new features will be supported on the GA.js code, so unless you've upgraded to Universal Analytics, you won't be able to leverage anything else that's pushed in the future.
Okay. The next question, I think, which was submitted earlier, was about examples of financial gain. I think you covered that quite well. Next question was, you mentioned on the user ID, for example, login authentication as a way to identify people. What about other methods for identifying that user? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we can get get a little bit creative. I think I mentioned during the presentation clicks on an email campaign. So if you're sending out emails and someone clicks on that device, we can then track them back to that user and generate a user ID for them. Things like a newsletter sign up or have them submit their email. Other ideas and other things I've seen, particularly retailers do, is provide an incentive, even for a short period of time, to log in or to provide that information. Give a coupon code or access to additional information, even for a month or so or for 2 weeks, so that you can generate enough data to kind of draw some insights out of that. Those are some of the key ways, I think. And then leveraging information that you already have. So if you do leverage a Google Plus or Facebook Connect sign-in, making sure that you're taking advantage of that and tying all that touch points together. If you're collecting information anyway on your site, just don't overlook it.
All right. With that, we are right up here against 2 o'clock, so I am gonna bring our talk today to conclusion. I appreciate everyone's attendance. Again, I encourage you to come back tomorrow at 1 and Thursday at 1. There are a couple questions I didn't get a chance to answer, which we will address in the blog entry. And I want to thank Lauren and Marlena from Google for their support. And again, thanks everyone for attending, and we'll see you tomorrow.